harnesses the fact for its own shady dealings, and what I understand is what I cannot understand. It is that species of fate, that precluding all caprice will give way to a concrete thought of the mechanical brain, and representing an organic truth will come to what I can understand, but only understand through the sublime connection of the mechanical and the organic stuff of the equation. Through fate unfathomable, I take mystery and put it on its hinds to stand by itself, as itself, something either complex and mechanical, or made organic to itself, and that one will understand it inherently and be unable to comprise the same elements of that truth into a mechanical equation still very specific, though it would belie the inherent justices given to that truth, as it could shake within the chest of a human who might sculpt the opposite force if they so choose, and yet end up with the same division of sense into the mechanical and organic. Again, it seems to me, it is all about what we can understand, but what we can understand is located in the spasm of his left eye, seeming the same length of time as not a length of time at all, but in the space of timelessness, through which pass the gentle contrasting lengths of something seen in difference rather than seconds, and flitting it bleeds into the darker borders that shunt within each mortal fathoming, like little metaphors of the paramour that plays between one thing and something else. It becomes an error in communication. The eye poses in a trance for a conveyance of quick emotion that is not properly fleshed out, even in the mind that gave the command, and so is a needless change, a working of the spheres that soon returns to symmetrical focus, and our eyes again meet. The action of the eye ended up being meaningless. As I said, I did not notice it. The reaction was not distilled into a facile meaning of expression. It was artless, without implication or ideal. It did not have the serenity of grace. It was not graceful. It was too exacting to be something manufactured, too ugly and yet not ugly because it was natural, and yet too fleeting for one to notice that it was fleeting. It dashed off into a mass of expression on his face, and soon the inconceivable dismissed. Again absent in each tame iota of the face, it was too fast to be something beautiful. Quite natural, but not very pretty, as it is that in order for a thing to be pretty, there should be a build-up of sorts, the climax, the emotional build-up of a story or song. In both cases, the audience is carried to that point by an accumulating suspense, energies becoming still more concentrated. Just by walking down the street, I am able to witness the climax of numerous energies and pursuits played out before me. But I have no emotional connection to these experiences and remain unmoved. It is this that I want to say to you, and only this. If you cannot fathom anything that I write, then know that the world is around us. The world around us is massive and complicated, comprised wholly of pivotal moments, and only pivotal moments, which arise out of sync with one another in different places and to different people. Moments of desperation, moments of tragedy, moments that are senseless and absurd. For proof of such absurdity, one is inclined to pluck out from the symptoms of their own impatient thinking this idea of fragmented stories, a bit of missing information relevant only to the protagonist and antagonist of the narrative in question, fragmented people, the idols of insanity, and the relationships that people wangle between themselves and the cosmos. See the truth in knowing, though only in part, the lives of strangers, for the information that can be known to us regarding the cosmos is just as fragmented and just as absurd. It is not unlike the spasm of his left eye that comes and goes, and yet there must have been something in there, some reasoning behind it that neither I nor the other could understand, and yet it was there. I find disparate pieces of truth and forge them together, due in part to the order in which they were found, the creation of falsehood. And so I see the drama is in the between. I may only come to this drama by living in a peripheral season. Ruined objectives destroy what it could be and assimilate the idea into what it is. But what it is a transparency, a lark of the sense, turning away from one point only to find that you enter another point, another neat schism, another antithesis. The idea, the conjecture, is never really that accurate, but in the summing of the object, which first is created, then said, but what is said is gone before it can be said fully. It drops down into a confusion of glances, a system of weird frames. At first glance, he is nothing but an empty declarative. At second glance, the meaning of this, and the human who is in what is described, wedging somehow into the anxious node, can be peripherally seen and thus mistaken for something within himself that describes nothing, nothing but the description itself. And on third glance, deeper clarity arises that, swiftly disproving the superficial meaning, most definitely describes something, but something as though it were nothing. And this brings us to the opposite of what is perceived in the first glance. And when finally understood by the fourth glance, he returns to meaning nothing at all. This is my own way of fickle unity. He is never fully understood. What he says can mean nothing and everything at the same time. This has only been for the benefit of that type of human, who lives the opposite of himself, burning in the noise of these words, the cue for the experience of this sentence. The man wakes up, the man yawns, the man scratches, and Hawking spits into the trash can, and his mind is a space. And the space has 5 different particles, and he's an argument against the ghost in him. This means he is an argument himself against his own existing. But which one is the ghost? It is the one he has not become yet, but will. And once he does, will not be a ghost, except in the ways he was a sort of ghost before seeking it. And it does not exist when he seeks it, and only exists when he stays how he is already. And yet how he is not the way the ghost is. This does not engulf him in the right way, and so he exists as a ghost to translate this confusion rattling in his brain like a marble in a tin can that bleaks the random into sense, through taking that sense and putting it through a filter, directing the sense back to what originally was random. And the brain I use as correlation between things that do not correlate, as it is that I must attach one reality to a counter of the physical element of the body, since the body is the ultimate physical element, and in being the ultimate physical element, probably harbors deeper awakening within rather than out. His brain turns green. The marriage of body and mind becomes green. He sees the fathoming of his body as being careless and deformed and simplistic. And soon this man is a ghost himself, and the ghost is mysterious, and it is like a new presumption of him. Where from he came is not known. Sprouted from perverse origins. He is an eating of his own reflection. He is a new beginning of perversity that dies in a figure, a blunt nuance. Superficial, dead, dying, lost battles that were the war. The velocity increases in the man-to-man. His soul is white, and his soul the whiteness of blankness. And the blank breeds, and silent agitation, flawed simplicity. He sees not else but theory in the world. A man who is obsession more than man, a stranger to himself and to his peers. He creates finality. The petty phrase is given him to distort. The distortion of what he means is exactly what he means. He means by meaning to do so, which is what turns the phrase petty, because it has no meaning, but in the finality he gives it. It is a genus of broken wonder, a genus of broken wonder, a rarity that is not impressive or amazing, it just happens to not exist very often, and starts to warp a little as this man tosses the phrase around like a flat, though heady conjecture that folds up the spine, gone fast, but not quickly, as though he felt the distance even an inch away from him, clocking nice from any involvement with him, who once had the will to speak the pause, and that before he spoke recollected each mystery in full, the blunt mysteries, made by him into acute little rods of reason, little needles in life that could have quite possibly brought him to the thought that he must take everything into account before investing his energies in some of the new stuff. You would rarely be able to keep his attention to you in this state, and by the time he has reached any sort of sheltered and ignorant conclusion, you are gone, and he's left to lick his digit and observe the trippy mysteries of only his only page in life, ignoring all other forms that stress the world until the world may hurtle beneath its own axis and come out of it backwards. He opens the book at the dog ear and finds the chapter where his life begins. He trails over the words absent-mindedly and lives what they describe in the same fashion. His life is located somewhere in the middle of the book, at a cathartic point, at a point of interest. The qualm is too demanding, however, and requires moderate attention and patience, neither of which we have. Congruency often evades one who has been remote from others for a long while, askance in the eye perhaps, a bit off, one would chance, but nothing is fixed. the turbinate flections of sound and color. He sees them bobbing vividly in his line of sight. Symbols form the words of speech, producing a kind of trippy halo in his thinking brain. That is to say, nothing is ever in any chase towards anything else. Thus, there is no habitual need to improve the aesthetic with cruel patterns. However much such people possess a lingering repetition, nothing will change in their lives, and how they will always change, as opposed to staying the same, will never deviate from a pattern ever there, and thus repeat. Such people shall suffer great cruelty unto themselves, will be cruel to themselves, will God over themselves with anguish. This lowly man, for my vision at present, this lowly man thus is tired / fatigued, because he has so far failed to appease the ghost in him. The contrite posture that he puts out of clay is a farce, his own sensitive clay disguising omnipotence. The universe is both infinite and finite, I think. These opposites are united in such a way that no human could possibly or ever fathom. Thus, I marry them myself, in my own way. As for all my ignorance, a testament and satire.